came up the same road to assess the damage and salvage what they could. They packed the crispy, crumbling ruins into fresh, clean boxes and sighed over what had been lost. Somehow, nobody noticed the jagged ruin of a 2-liter propane tank that had exploded in the flames in the farthest, dimmest corner of the cellar, or the narrow tunnel dug into the earthen foundation behind it, or the ancient iron strongbox inside, its lid thrown open and torn askew in the blast. Nobody squatted beside it or shone a flashlight inside. Nobody spotted the crude clay figure of a man blackened by smoke and broken cleanly in two. So nobody saw the dark man coming. 1. Jacob had finished his first pint and started on his second by the time his ex-wife arrived. Seated in a corner booth, he watched with pleasure as she made her entrance, a crisp, exasperated Englishwoman in an ivory-colored raincoat. There was a bit of comic bother with her umbrella, a terse exchange with the barman, then she saw him. "Gloria in excelsis," he said, rising to kiss her cheek. "Here at last." "Are you aware how many pubs in Dublin are called Kavanagh's?" she answered, waving her smartphone at him. Luckily, the driver knew the one near Cemetery. She was perfectly made up. No one would have suspected the two of them were the same age, both closing in on 50. His face, always thin, had taken on hollows under the cheekbones and deep crinkles around the eyes, shadowed even more deeply now that he'd given up sleeping. But Gloria's skin, from a distance at least, looked as fresh and dewy as a girl's. She returned his kiss in kind. "I knew that must be the one. I could have come to London," he said, pulling out her chair. "Not really. You're the famous man of letters, after all." She sat down. "I'm merely an accountant." "You've never been merely anything." He sat back down and signaled to their waitress. "You look stunning, by the way." "After the ferry in the rain, I hardly think so." She caught him smiling and smiled back. "Stop teasing me." "You know I wasn't." The waitress had come over. "Will you have a pint?" he said, raising his glass. "Dear God, no." She looked the girl over with suspicion. "I don't suppose there's any chance of a decent glass of wine." "Every chance, and better than decent," he promised. He ordered her a respectable Sauvignon Blanc, and the serving girl went away with a smile. She slipped out of her coat and settled back in her chair. "All right then, tell me, what's this about? Maggie's concerned, you know." "What?" he asked, surprised over a sip of his stout. "Maggie is." Maggie was their daughter, a student at Oxford. "She tells me you haven't been sleeping." She crossed her arms, but her eyes remained kind. "What's wrong?" "Nothing is wrong." He and his daughter exchanged emails almost every day, but he didn't remember mentioning the nightmares. "I didn't ask to see you to talk about that." "What then?" The waitress placed Gloria's wine on the table. She took a sip and gave the girl a tiny nod and smile. The girl smiled back and winked at Jacob over Gloria's head before she walked away. "You're my business manager," Jacob said. Gloria had managed his finances back when he'd had almost none. It had seemed only logical to ask her to continue when he had millions, divorce or not. "I'm about to spend a lot of money in America, and I didn't want you to be alarmed." "What are you buying?" She took another sip. "An American?" "Nothing like that." He knew she lived in dread of his remarrying, though he couldn't imagine why. She herself had remarried twice since their divorce, and was now very happy, according to Maggie. "I'm going to buy a house." He took a deep swallow of his drink, the strange thrill that came over him every time he said it out loud coming over him again. "And some land. A plantation, actually, in South Carolina." "A plantation?" He had managed to surprise her. "Jacob, you can't be serious." "I am," he smiled, enjoying her shock. "Why on earth?" "I'm not sure." He had been weighing how much or how little to tell her since he'd made up his mind to do it. "I dreamed about it," he said, deciding to give her the full, unvarnished truth. "Oh, for God's sake." "Just listen." He stared.